Gaunt dies. This is on page 756 in our text. Gaunt dies, and Richard says, 160. Towards our assistance we do seize to us the plate, the coin, revenues, and movables, whereof our uncle Gaunt did stand possessed. He's already implied he's going to do that. Now he specifically states he's going to. York, how long shall I be patient? Okay. Why does he say this?
He's never questioned the king before and his wrongdoings.
Exactly. York is another one of Richard's uncles. Okay, he's one of the 7 children of the previous king. How long shall I be patient? How long shall tender duty make me suffer wrong? Okay, he's beginning to touch on that idea, or what Bevington calls that doctrine of passive obedience. Again, notice, how long shall I suffer wrong? Not Gloucester's death. Notice, I didn't do anything when Gloucester was murdered. Okay, nor Hereford's banishment, nor when Bolingbroke was banished, nor Gaunt's rebukes, that is, nor your smarting off, essentially, to Gaunt, nor England's private wrongs, nor even the things you've done to the country itself, nor the prevention of poor Bolingbroke about his marriage, because Richard prevented Bolingbroke from marrying who he wanted to marry, nor my own disgrace have made me sour my patient cheek, or bend one wrinkle on my sovereign's face. Bend one wrinkle on his sovereign's face. What's he talking about? Go up and, mush it with his fingers?
Age.
No, it's not age. Though you would think, that's how your face gets wrinkled. How else can your face get wrinkled? Look at the faces on the news yesterday of parents wondering whether or not their child is coming out of that high school alive. Worry. He's saying, I never worried the king. I never spoke how? Brandy, you kind of implied it earlier. In any way that would make him frown. In any way that would displease him. Okay? He's kept it all to himself. I am the last of noble Edward's sons, of whom thy father, Prince of Wales, was first. Okay? Prince of Wales, talking about the Black Prince. In war was never lion rage more fierce, and peace was never gentle lamb more mild, than was that young and princely gentleman. His face thou hast, for even so looked he, accomplished with the number of thy hours. But when he frowned, that is, when the Black Prince frowned, okay, it was against the French and not against his friends. He didn't turn against his own people. His noble hand did win what he did spend. Now, that is a word or a statement that should make Richard frown. Because what's he saying?
He only spent the money that he rightfully earned instead of what he took from other people.
Exactly. Richard hasn't earned any of what he has spent. What's he been doing? He's been taking it from his people. His hands were guilty of no kindred blood. So he's accused him, one, now, of essentially stealing from the public coffers, two, murder of a family member. His hands were guilty of no kindred blood, but bloody with the enemies of his kin. O Richard, York is too far gone with grief, or else he never would compare between. He's saying, I've not just that he's reached his boiling point. He's saying, I am so far on the other side, I wouldn't even bother to talk about this. You've made me so full of grief and anger for what's going on. Why, Uncle? What's the matter? What does Richard's reply tell us about? Trevor, you've got a grin on your face.
He's just kind of can't take a hint, I suppose.
Is it that he can't take a hint? Is he truly this clueless?
He just doesn't care.
Yeah, he doesn't care. Why not? I'm the king. Kings can do what?
Whatever.
Whatever they damn well please. You know, channel the old, what's his name? Rapper from the 80s, 90s, big balloon pants. MC Hammer. You can't touch this. You can't touch this. I mean, he's going to say, unless he's already said it. I don't think he already said it. He's going to make the comment about there's not enough water in the ocean to do what? To remove the anointing from me. I am God's chosen. There's nothing you can do about it. So, York goes on and says, pardon me if you please. If not, I don't care whether you pardon me or not. I am content with all. So, if you want, pardon me. If not, the hell with it. Seek you to seize and grip into your hands the royalties and rights of banished Hereford or Hefford. Okay, notice what York is saying. You're saying, King, you're going to take Gaunt's everything. Okay, well, Gaunt's already lost everything, right? Why?
The son's gone.
He's dead. He's dead. His plate, his coin, his revenue, his movables. You can't touch this, because Gaunt can't touch anything. York's point is what? Those don't belong to him anymore. Who do they belong to? His heir, his successor. Okay? So, you're going to take everything that belongs to banished Hefford, because how long is he banished Hefford for? 6 years. He's going to come back. When he comes back, what's he going to expect? His land, his rights, his properties, his coin, his revenues. He's going to expect all of that. In other words, Bolingbroke's going to suppose or assume everything that his father owned will be held, kind of in abeyance until he returns. Is not Gaunt dead? Doth not Hereford live? Was not Gaunt just? And is not Harry true? Harry, nickname for Henry. Okay? Talking about Bolingbroke. Did not the one deserve to have an heir? Is not his heir a well-deserving son? Okay? After all, Richard only banished Bolingbroke for 6 years. He banished Mowbray for life. Take Hefford's rights away and take from time his charters and his customary rights. Take from time. Look at your gloss, 195. If you take Hefford's rights away, then you take from time, okay, his, time's, charters and customary rights. What does he mean by time, though? Traditions. You take this stuff away from Bolingbroke, and he says, what are you doing to our English cultural tradition? You are defenestrating it, throwing it out the window. Okay? And if he throws that out the window, what is included in part of that? He's implying, be careful what you do. You destroy one tradition, and what starts to happen? All the other little traditions will start to fall away too. And included in those is, you can't touch the king. Okay? Let not tomorrow then ensue today. Because, if you take from time his charters and customary rights, and what does that mean? Time, as Hamlet says, will be out of joint. Okay? And tomorrow won't come after today. Be not thyself. You won't be yourself, meaning you won't be Richard. No, you won't be king. For how art thou a king, but by fair sequence and succession? If tomorrow won't follow from today, because time will be out of joint, then how will you still be king? Because the whole idea of succession will be destroyed. Now, before God, this is an oath. He is swearing this. And this is back when swearing an oath to God meant something. Okay? God forbid I say true. If you do wrongfully seize Hereford's rights, call in the letters patents that he hath by his attorneys general to sue his livery. That is, to sue, okay, to appeal for all of his rights, okay, and deny his offered homage. If you deny his offered homage, what's homage?
To pay respect or
Pay respect. That is when a medieval knight would go down on the knee to his leader. Okay? It might be a local duke. Okay? The greatest one in the feudal system, the king. Because underneath the king is everybody. And everybody is essentially vassal to the king. Okay? If you deny him that, he says, you what? You pluck 1,000 dangers on your head. He is saying, you take away his plate, coin, revenue, movables, you deny him his homage to you. You make it so that he's no longer Duke of Lancaster. And what does he now owe you? Nothing. You take that from him, he's saying, you make him into an enemy. It's a pretty fair warning, right? You pluck 1,000 dangers on your head, you lose 1,000 well-disposed hearts. That is, you will lose those who are disposed towards you, who favor you, and prick my tender patience to those thoughts which honor and allegiance cannot think. What are those thoughts that honor and allegiance cannot think? That is, thoughts that you cannot hold in your mind at the same time as you have honor and allegiance. Overthrow, regicide, treason, okay, insurrection, rebellion. Think what you will. You little small man, Richard is almost saying. We seize into our hands his plate, his goods, his money, his lands. Everything York said, it's just out there in the ether. Doesn't mean anything to him. York, I'll not be by the while. In other words, see you later. I'm not going to stick with you. Okay? But what does Richard say? Yes, you will. Okay? York leaves, and Richard says, go Bushy to the Earl of Wiltshire Strait, bid him repair to us to Ely House to see this business. Tomorrow, we're going for Ireland. Okay. So the king's going to go to Ireland. He's going to take his loyal lords with him. Who's he going to leave in charge of England? The person who just told him, if you do these things, I cannot hold in my mind honor and allegiance and these other thoughts I have. What is Richard assuming? Turns out he assumes correctly here. He'll do what he's told. He'll follow the law. Why? He's a traditionalist. He will follow tradition. He will obey the king. Okay? So, Richard leaves. Northumberland and others stay. And Northumberland says, well, lords, Duke of Lancaster is dead. Ross, yeah, and living too, because now his son is Duke. Well, title only, not in revenues, Willoughby says. In other words, what good is it to be Duke in name only? You know, Northumberland, richly in both, if justice had her right. He is both Duke in title and in all of his revenues and such. What? If there were justice in the land. So, Ross says, you know, boy, I've got this real burden on my heart. but it must break with silence. That is, his heart must break with silence. Why? Ere it be disburdened with a liberal tongue. Ere I let out what is in my heart. Northumberland, speak your mind. Why do you think Northumberland says this?
What do you think when I think?
He's thinking the exact same thing. And let him ne'er speak more that speaks thy words again to do thee harm. Let him ne'er speak more that speaks thy words again to do thee harm. Let him who repeats your words, intending to do you harm, let that person speak no more. Meaning? Yeah, exactly. So, Willoughby, so you would speak to the Duke of Hertford? If it be so, out with it. Come on. Oh, Northumberland. Now, afore God, there it is again. 'Tis shame such wrongs are born in him, a royal prince, and many more of noble blood in this declining land. Okay? To him, Bolingbroke, Duke of Hertford, now Duke of Lancaster. He's bearing many wrongs, and not only him, many more of noble blood in this, what land? What did Gaunt call England with his great speech back there in 2-1? This royal throne of kings, this sceptred isle, this earth of majesty, this seat of Mars, skipping several lines, this blessed plot, this earth, this realm, this England, this nurse, this teeming womb of royal kings. Now, Northumberland, this declining land. What does it mean to be declining?
Going downhill.
Going down. It's no longer upright. Okay? It's falling away. The king is not himself, but basely led by flatterers. Notice how Northumberland puts a spin on the king. Okay? He's not himself. So if he's not himself, what is he? Possessed? He doesn't mean it literally. He's basely led. Basely. What's base mean? Lowly. Commonly. Okay? Led by flatterers. Well, what do the flatterers get out of it? Wealth. Lands.
King's favor, therefore power.
The king's favor and power. I mean, remember when the king said about it, this court has what? Grown too large. Okay? Those are the flatterers. He's not himself means we can't really blame the king. He's not acting, it's almost like in his right mind. If the king were really himself, he wouldn't be doing this. Why? This is not kingly. Notice the circular reason there. And what they will inform merely in hate against any of us all, that will the king severely prosecute. That is. And what they suggest to the king, that he will do against us, our lives, our children, and our heirs. What's Northumberland building to? He hasn't stated it. He's implied it. They have to do what? Louder? Rebel. Why?
Because if they don't, then people who don't like them that are next to the king will just take them on anyway.
It'll be not only Lancaster who loses his plate coin revenues movables. It'll be Northumberland. It'll be Ross. It'll be Willoughby. It'll be all the nobles. And if you read any medieval English history, what do we see repeatedly happening? Problems between the king and the nobles. After all, what is the year 1215 important for? We just celebrated the 800th anniversary of this thing. Yes, it is. Magna Carta, the Great Charter, okay, which the barons, the nobles, forced King John to sign. Well, what's Magna Carta? king is not above the law. And what else?
Parliament.
Parliament, regular meeting of Parliament. They had a kind of a Parliament before, but it was only when the king called for it. So now the Parliament was called for, if I remember correctly, at least once a year. Okay, what else? Trial by jury of one's peers. You could not be arrested without charges. Sound like anything familiar? It's partially the basis for our constitutional system. Okay? Why? Because people were being arrested without charges. Okay? They were being tried by the king. Okay? Not a jury of one's peers, etc., etc. So, Ross, the commons hath he pilled with grievous taxes. Okay? He's robbed with taxes and quite lost their hearts. You know, what are these dates again? When is Richard II? The late 14th century, 1367 to 1399/1400. Some dates put his death 99, some 1400. It might be because of the change in, the calendar from the old Julian to the Gregorian and such. So he's taxed the commoners, lost their hearts, that is, the people no longer support him. The nobles hath he fined for ancient quarrels, and so he's lost the commoners and he's lost the nobles. What does the Constitution, and Jefferson implies this in the Declaration of Independence, where does our government get its right to rule? From the consent of the governed. Hasn't used the words because this idea was foreign in Shakespeare's day, but Ross is implying he's lost the consent of the governed. Okay? So they go back and forth. Willoughby calls him bankrupt, a broken man, and Ross, most degenerate king, he calls him. About, 263 or so. They keep talking, and Ross says, be confident to speak, down 275, be confident to speak, Northumberland. We three are but thyself. That is, we're all in total agreement. Our minds are in perfect sync. In speaking so, thy words are but as thoughts. Therefore, be bold. Come on, unfold everything to us that you're thinking. And he says, I have from Port LeBlanc, a bay in Brittany, received intelligence that Harry Duke of Hereford, Reynold Lord Cobham, that late broke from the Duke of Exeter, his brother Archbishop Late of Canterbury, Sir Thomas Erpingham, Sir John Ramsden, and he just rattles off a bunch of names. What? All these, well furnished by the Duke of Brittany, with 8 tall ships, 3,000 men of war, are making hither with all due expedience. Henry is doing what?
Coming with an army.
He's coming home, and he's not coming home alone. Okay? And shortly mean to touch our northern shore. Now, I think when Shakespeare puts those words, our northern shore, his audience, most of them, would remember something. Okay? The Spanish Armada. The Spanish Armada didn't set sail for the south of England. It set sail for the north of England and was destroyed by a hurricane. But also part of the Spanish Armada was this plot that the northern Catholics would welcome them. Okay? Perhaps they had erred this, but that they stay the first departing of the king for Ireland. That is, but they were going to wait for the king to leave. If then we shall shake off our slavish yoke, imp out our drooping country's broken wing, meaning add feathers to our country's drooping wing, to give it power, to give it flight, redeem from broken pawn the blemished crown. Look at that. Redeem from the pawn shop, the crown of England. Why? Because the king's been selling, he's been having a fire sale, to raise money for his wars and for his largesse to followers. Yes.
So pawn could also be in reference to just like an average, because like obviously chess, like they're the ones that go.
Yeah, but he's saying redeem. Okay? Redeem from broking pawn. Your gloss down there. From being pledged to pawnbrokers. I mean, when you hawk something, you take it to a pawn shop, you give it to them, they're kind of holding it for you until you can get the money to come back and redeem it. But what can the pawn shop do in the intervening time? They can sell it. Okay? Wipe off the dust that hides our scepter's guilt and make High Majesty look like itself. Therefore, let's go to Ravensburg. Why? That's where Bolingbroke's going to land. Okay? So, 2-2. The queen has, not a vision, premonition. Something bad's going to happen. She says, some unborn sorrow, ripe in fortune's womb, is coming towards me, and my inward soul with nothing trembles. She's troubled, but she knows there's no cause for the trouble. In Bushy's like, don't worry about it. Okay? She says, yeah, but my inward soul persuades me it's otherwise. Green comes in. What does he tell her? Bolingbroke's back. Well, there's that thing that fortune was warning her of. The banished Bolingbroke, line 49, repeals himself, that is, repealed his banishment. Well, he can't do that. Only the king can do that. Okay? Repeals himself, and with uplifted arms is safe arrived at Ravensburg. Uplifted arms. Weapons raised in rebellion. It's kind of like, also, he lands on Ravensburg and raises a fist to the king. Green says, and there's more. Northumberland, his son young Harry Percy, the lords of Ross, Beaumont, Willoughby, with all their powerful friends are fled to him. Where is Richard meanwhile? Dallying over in Ireland. Okay? So the queen says, when York comes in, speak comfortable words. Make me feel better. Should I do so, I should belie my thoughts. I'm going to speak the truth. Comfort's in heaven. You want comfort? That's where you're going to find it. And we are on the earth. Now this is an idea Shakespeare likes. He does this in several of his plays. Life down here is what? To quote from one of my favorite films of all time, Princess Bride. Anybody remember what the life is pain, Highness? Okay? That's what Shakespeare means. Okay? Where nothing lives here on earth but crosses, cares, and grief. Put that on a bumper sticker. And then you die. That's life. Your husband, he is gone to save far off. Gone where? Gone to Ireland. To save what? To save Ireland for England. Meanwhile, others come to make him lose at home. What's York saying? Your husband's a damn fool. He should have done what? Taken care of the problems at home before he worried about going off. Okay? York, 88 or so. The nobles, they are fled. The commons, they are cold, and will, I fear, revolt on Hereford's side. So when the king comes back, who's he going to have to rally to his side? The people who are with him. That's pretty much it. Okay? Jump up to 2-3. Okay? We get Bolingbroke's re-entrance, and Northumberland and Percy appear. Okay. Northumberland is the Duke of Northumberland. He's the father of Henry Percy. They just separate the two because he's the Duke. He has the title. Percy doesn't have the title yet. Percy will get the title if his father dies. Okay? For example, if Northumberland were to die in this play, in the next play, Henry IV Part 1, you wouldn't have Percy. You'd have Northumberland. But it would be Harry Percy, Duke of Northumberland. But he doesn't die in this one. Okay? So we see line 41, 2, 3. Percy, Harry Hotspur, kind of offers allegiance to Bolingbroke. This is going to be important because of what transpires in Henry IV Parts 1 and 2. My gracious Lord, I tender you my service, such as it is, being tender, raw, and young, which elder days shall ripen and confirm to more approved service and desert. What's he mean? I give you my service, but I know it's not that great. Why? I'm just a kid. Like late teens, early 20s. In Shakespeare's play, he's about the same age as Hal, who Bolingbroke is going to refer to at the very end of the play. Okay? Not quite the very end, but last act or so. Last couple scenes. We hear nothing about him up until that point. Okay? So, they keep talking, and Berkeley brings a message, or Berkeley as it would be pronounced, brings a message to Bolingbroke. And Bolingbroke says, my lord, my answer is to Lancaster. Because Berkeley says, my lord of Hereford. He goes, no. Get it right. I'm Duke of Lancaster now. Okay? Hereford is for the son of Lancaster. All right? And I am come to seek that name in England, and I must find that title in your tongue before I make reply to aught you say. That is, if you want to speak to me, address me by my proper title. Notice he's not saying king. Okay? Sorry, Berkeley says. Didn't mean to offend. Didn't mean to raise one title of your honor out. To you, my lord, I come. What lord you will. That is, whatever name you want to be called. From the most gracious regent of this land, the Duke of York. Regent, the one who is ruling in the stead of the real ruler. To know what pricks you on to take advantage of the absent time and fright our native peace with self-born arms. In other words, Berkeley's there to find out, what the hell are you guys doing? Why are you armed? Cop a pee, head to toe. Okay. When the king's not here, York comes in and notice Bolingbroke kneels. What's he showing? Both York and us. Respect, homage. York is the de facto ruler. Drop on your knee. Show me thy humble heart and not thy knee. That is, let me see your heart take a knee, not just your knee, whose duty is deceivable and false. My gracious uncle, don't uncle me. Grace me no grace, nor uncle me no uncle. I am no traitor's uncle. Wow. He's just said, if you're a traitor, I'm not your uncle. You are no relation to me. And that word grace in an ungracious mouth is but profane. Why have those banished and forbidden legs dared once to touch the dust of England's ground, but then more? Why? That is, but that's really just the first of many whys. Why have they dared to march so many miles upon her peaceful bosom, frighting her pale-faced villages with war and ostentation of despised arms? Comest thou because the anointed king is hence? That is, did you come because the king is gone? Why, foolish boy? The king is left behind, and in my loyal bosom lies his power. I have all the power, duty, majesty of the king. So if you thought you were landing on a kingless isle, you were wrong. Were I but now the lord of such hot youth as when brave Gaunt, thy father, and myself rescued the Black Prince, that young Mars of men, from forth the ranks of many thousand French, oh, then how quickly should this arm of mine, now prisoner to the palsy, chastise thee, and minister correction to thy fault. If I were still young, and my arms weren't like this, I'd kick your ass, you little... That's what he means. That is entirely what he means. You wouldn't uncle me no uncle or grace me no grace then. My gracious uncle. Okay, he just told him, don't call me my grace, don't call me uncle. And he uses both terms. Why? Because Bolingbroke is saying, in my heart of hearts, I am loyal. Okay? Let me know my fault. Tell me my wrongs. On what condition stands it? What's the basis of it? And wherein? Okay? Notice. 107, condition. What defect in me or provision of the law? So, even in condition of the worst degree. That is, defect in you and kind of violation of the law. In gross rebellion and detested treason. Rebellion, you were banished for 6 years. It hasn't been 6 years. Rebellion, you have taken up arms against the king. Okay? And there was a law in medieval society, and I'd have to ask Professor Reed, who knows much, much more about medieval warfare and armor laws than I do. But there was a law that, one, only knights can go armed. Okay? But two, they can't always go armed. That is, they had to have essentially the permission of the king. Well, he doesn't have permission of the king. And the implication is, neither do the thousands of men who are following him. That's why it's open treason. Thou art a banished man, and here art come before the expiration of thy time, in braving arms against thy sovereign. Braving, opposing arms against thy sovereign. And notice, Bolingbroke, he's been kneeling this whole time. Now he stands up. Why? He's going to defend himself. He's not going to defend himself from a position of weakness. As I was banished Hereford. As I come for Lancaster. He banished the Duke of Hereford. I'm Duke of Lancaster now. I wasn't the one banished. Notice, this is really smart on his part. I mean, talk about niggling with the words of the law. And, noble uncle, I beseech your grace, look on my wrongs with an indifferent eye. Indifferent. Impartial. Be a true judge. And tell me if I am wrong. Okay? You are my father, for methinks in you I see old Gaunt alive. Oh then, my father, will you permit that I shall stand condemned, a wandering vagabond, my rights and royalties plucked from my arms, perforce and given away to upstart unthrifts? He's saying, a knight has a responsibility to defend his rights and honors. Wherefore was I born? If I'm going to lose all that stuff, why was I even born? What purpose do I have? If that my cousin king be king in England, it must be granted I am Duke of Lancaster. That is, if my cousin really is the king, then ipso facto, I really must be the Duke of Lancaster. If titles mean anything. You have a son, Almeril, my noble cousin. Had you first died, guess what? He'd be Duke of York. He should have found his uncle Gaunt a father. to rouse his wrongs and chase them to the bay. I am denied to sue my livery here, and yet my letters patents give me leave. Okay. I'm denied the right to suit for possession of hereditary rights in England. Letters patents, letters from the king indicating a subject's legal rights. That is, my letters give me these rights. My father's goods are all distrained and sold, and these and all are all amiss employed. What would you have me do? And I think what he really means is, what would you do in my shoes? I am a subject. I challenge law. In other words, I have legal rights. And I'm appealing to the law. Attorneys are denied me. You can't do that after Magna Carta. Okay? The king can't do that. Therefore, personally, I lay my claim to my inheritance free descent. Because the king won't listen to my attorneys, he's saying, I'm representing myself. Okay, armed to the teeth, but, representing myself. So, Northumberland, Ross, Willoughby say, rah, rah, rah. York, my lords of England, let me tell you this. I have had feeling of my cousin's wrongs and labored all I could to do him right. That is, yeah, I agree. The king hasn't acted wisely. I tried to dissuade him. But in this kind to come how you are coming. How? In braving arms. To be his own carver and cut out his way, to find out right with wrong it may not be. What's he mean, to find out right with wrong?
Two wrongs don't make a right.
Close.
You're in the right, but you're going about it the wrong way.
Exactly. You are right. You are being wronged. But you can't make things right by doing it the wrong way. What would the right way be?
Peacefully and diplomatically.
It's the passive obedience. Get down on your knees and pray to God. Oh God, make this situation right. The only problem with that is God's timing and our timing are often two different things. Okay? And you that do abet him in this kind, now, when he says abet, I think he has legal ramifications in his mind. Cherish rebellion and are rebels all. Aid and abetting. Okay? Means what? You are as guilty of the crime as the individual actually performing the crime. Northumberland. The noble duke hath sworn his coming is but for his own. Okay? Bolingbroke said, he swore, all he's doing is coming back to get his land and rights and title and nothing more. And for the right of that, we all have strongly sworn to give him aid. And let him never see joy that breaks that oath. Okay? Who's the him there? Let him never see joy that breaks that oath. And what oath? Okay, look at the passage again. The noble duke has sworn all he's for is to reclaim his titles and lands and stuff. Okay? And we have sworn to help him. So that oath refers to what? The nobles who have sworn to help Bolingbroke? Bolingbroke's oath?
The oath to God.
Okay, but they're different oaths. Bolingbroke's oath is, I swear, all I want is my land title rights. So what if he breaks that oath? What if he actually wants a little bit more? Like, who's next in line to the king? He kind of is. King doesn't have an heir. Bolingbroke is closest in blood relation to the king. So, if he swore falsely, if he breaks that oath, Notice what Northumberland is saying. Let him never see joy. Well, jump from the end of this play, or jump from this play to the beginning of the next play, and what do we discover? Henry IV, aka Bolingbroke, is now at odds with whom? Northumberland, Willoughby, Ross, Berkeley, and a bunch of others. Why? He's now king, even though in the remaining 3 acts of this play, they're the ones who help him to become king. York, okay. I see the issue of these arms, I cannot mend it, I must needs confess, because my power is weak and all ill left. In other words, if I were a young man, I'd whip you. Again, he's saying, I can't do anything to stop you. But if I could, notice, by him who gave me life, by God, I would attach you all and make you stoop unto the sovereign mercy of the king. 156, attach, arrest. I would put you in chains and what? Make you bow to the king. Even though, what has he said about the king? York.
He's wrong.
He's wrong. The king is acting wrongly. But guess what? God appoints the king. You go against the king, what are you doing? You're going against God. It's part of this Renaissance idea that is sometimes called the doctrine of correspondences. Correspondences. That is, the king corresponds to God. You act against the king, you act against God. Right? And to take this idea, follow the great chain of being, the person underneath the king is like the individual, the next highest of the angelic order, and you go all the way down the line. Right? What is this ultimately all about? I know, it is a word really hated in our society. Hierarchy. That there is a natural, cap does not want to go on, a natural order to the universe. Okay? And again, that's an idea our society absolutely hates. But it's true. It's true. How do you know? Look at the physical world. Single-celled organisms, two-celled organisms. That's hierarchy, folks. That's pure and simple. That's what it is. Okay? You go up, 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 up. Okay. So does that mean within the human realm there is a natural order? Yes, there is to some extent, because you have at the lowest level of the human realm, newborn baby. Okay? Is it talking about a moral hierarchy? A moral superiority? No. We're talking mere kind of level of existence. Okay? So, we're going to skip 2:4, go on to 3:1. I don't know why it's taking me so long. Bushy and Green come in, they're prisoners. And Bolingbroke says, bring forth these men, Bushy and Green, I will not vex your souls, since presently your souls must part your bodies, with too much urging your pernicious lives. For 'twere no charity. What does he mean, since presently your souls must part your bodies?
He's going to kill him.
You're going to be dead soon. Why? Yet to wash your blood from off my hands, like Pilate, I am innocent of this man's blood. Here in the view of men, I unfold some causes of your deaths. What is Bolingbroke taking to himself? I'm intentionally not using a word because the word would give it away. Let me go on. Just keep that question in mind. You have misled a prince, a royal king, a happy gentleman, in blood and lineaments by you, unhappied and disfigured clean. Clean there means entirely. You have in manner with your sinful hours made a divorce betwixt his queen and him, broke the possession of a royal bed. What's he implying? You guys have made it so that the king isn't sleeping with the queen. And he's implying the king is sleeping with somebody else. Okay? It's a homosexual implication. And stain the beauty of a fair queen's cheeks with tears drawn from her eyes by your foul wrongs. Myself, a prince by fortune of my birth, near to the king in blood and near in love, till you did make him misinterpret me. The king and I were like this until you did what? Separated us, put a wedge between us. Have stooped my neck under your injuries and sighed my English breath in foreign clouds. That is, you made me breathe foreign air, eating the bitter bread of banishment, whilst you have fed upon my seigneuries, line 22, my estates. Now that my dear old dad is dead, disparked my park, I love that, disparked my parks, okay, that is thrown open to uses other than hunting and forestry, my parks, felled my forest woods, from my own windows torn my household coat, my coat of arms, raised out my emprises, leaving me no sign save men's opinions and my living blood to show the world I am a... You have taken everything that shows I am a gentleman. Nobility is what he means there. This and much more than twice all this, condemns you to the death. Send him off. What's he taking to himself? What's he usurping? It's the word I didn't want to use. Authority. What authority? Trial?
Which is interesting, because that's what he didn't like about Richard.
Judgment? Does he have the legal authority to pronounce the sentence of execution? No, he doesn't. He doesn't. What? The king did break his legal authority, though the king says, what I do is legal.
Well, all's fair.
Yeah, all's fair in love and war. The king is essentially saying, notwithstanding this, what? I am the law. Okay? What should Bushy and Green do? We appeal to the king. We appeal to law. Because what has Bolingbroke just previously done? He's appealing to the law. He says, the king denies my attorneys. Therefore, I'm appealing myself. Okay? Bushy, more welcome is the stroke of death to me than Bolingbroke to England. I'd rather die than live with you here. Okay? He's like, okay, we can make that happen. So, go on to 3-2. Richard comes back from Ireland, and he lands on English soil, and he bows down to it and touches the ground. Dear earth, I do salute thee with my hand. Yeah, well, he's going to salute it a little bit later on, but not with his hand. Though rebels wound thee with their horses' hooves. Okay? Carlyle, fear not, my lord, the power that made you king hath power to keep you king in spite of all. Okay, what does Carlyle mean by that? Because there's two meanings there.
God will reinstate you, or
Well,
help you win this war.
God will uphold you. That's surface level. What else? What's the subtext? What's Carlyle really doing? He's flattering him. Oh, yeah, got nothing to worry about, king. That means the heavens' yield must be embraced and not neglected as heaven would, and we would not, etc., etc. So, Richard starts speaking, and I want to pick up with 47. He's talking about them standing bare and naked, trembling at the... So when this thief, this traitor, Bolingbroke, who all this while hath reveled in the night, whilst we were wandering with the antipodes, that is the other side of the world, metaphorically, shall see us rising in our throne the east. Notice how he talks. I'm not making a comparison. Well, I am making a comparison. I'm not saying, I'm making a comparison only in terms of rhetoric. Okay? Their use of rhetoric. I'm not making the comparison I'm about to make, in that the two people are similar in, moral capacity and all that. He's a lot like Obama. I mean, what did Obama say real early after his election? This is the moment what? We will see the ocean start to, not decrease, fall, because the rising oceans because of global warming. This is the time we will see, blah, blah. And he kind of, made himself out like this Messiah character. Listen to Richard. I'm talking rhetoric here. Whilst they, the enemies, shall see us rising in our throne the east. He's saying, I am like the sun. His treasons will sit blushing in his face, not able to endure the sight of day. Me! That's what he's saying. Bolingbroke, when he comes into my presence, he will go, because of my glory. Not all, but self-affrighted, tremble at his sin. Not all the water in the rough, rude sea can wash the balm off from an anointed king. Bolingbroke will be reminded of that when he sees me in all my glory. The breath of worldly men cannot depose the deputy elected by the Lord. None of you can harm me. For every man that Bolingbroke hath pressed to lift shrewd steel against their golden crown, God for his Richard hath in heavenly pay a glorious angel. Notice, God and his angels are going to destroy them. Then if angels fight, weak men must fall, for heaven still guards the right. The right, that means the true. Okay? And he is the true king. So, Richard speaks with Salisbury and Aumerle, and Richard talks about the 20,000 Irishmen who fled from his face, etc. Line 80, all souls that will be safe fly from my side, for time has set a blot upon my pride. Well, that's a pretty far cry from what he was just saying. He's saying, you want to be safe? You better leave me. Why? Time hath set a blot upon my pride, a stain. Aumerle, channeling Mufasa to Simba. Remember who you are. You are the king. I had forgot myself. Oh, yeah. Am I not king? Awake, thou coward majesty, thou sleepest. Is not the king's name 20,000 names? Arm, arm, my name. A puny subject strikes at thy great glory. A puny subject, there's Bolingbroke. A pest. Look not to the ground, ye favorites of a king. Are we not high? High be our thoughts. What's this telling us about Richard? At moments he can deliver great oratory. What's he think deep down inside?
Self-doubt.
Self-doubt. Okay? So, Scroop comes in and says, more health and happiness betide my liege than can my care-tuned tongue deliver him. More health and happiness to you than I can verbally deliver to you. What's he mean?
Got bad news.
I've got bad news for you, King. Okay. The worst is worldly loss thou canst unfold. That is, the worst thing you could tell me is I've lost my kingdom. Say, is my kingdom lost? Why, 'twas my care. That is, it was a burden. What loss is it to be rid of care or burden? Strives Bolingbroke to be as great as we? Greater he shall not be. If he serve God, we'll serve him too, that is God, and be his fellow so. If he would serve God, I will stand beside him and serve God also. What does he mean, will he serve God? Will he recognize me as king? In doing so, he'll be serving God. Revolt our subjects? That is, will he revolt our subjects? That we cannot mend. We can't fix that. They break their faith to God as well as us. Cry woe, destruction, ruin, and decay. The worst is death, and death will have his day. If he doesn't serve God, all hell's going to break loose. Scroop, way to go, King. I'm glad that your highness is so armed to bear the tidings of calamity. That's what I wanted to hear. I wanted to hear that stout heart, you know. Why? Because like an unseasonable stormy day, which makes the silver rivers drown their shores as if the world were all dissolved to tears, so high above his limit swells the rage of Bolingbroke, covering your fearful land with hard bright steel and hearts harder than steel. White beards have armed their thin and hairless scalps against thy majesty. Even the old men like York have taken up swords against you. Boys with women's voices strive to speak big and clap their female joints and stiff unwieldy arms against thy crowns. What is Scroop getting at?
Everyone.
You're screwed, man. Boys to grandfathers are arming up against you. The very beadsmen learn to bend their bows of double fatal yew against thy state. Beadsmen, old almsmen or pensioners whose duty it was to pray for a benefactor, here for the king. They've put aside their beads and they've learned how to string a double bow. Young and old rebel, and all goes worse than I have power. And I've not even touched, 1% of it, King. Too well, thou tell'st the tale so ill. Where's Wiltshire? Where's Bagot? Where's Bushy? Where's Green? They've made peace with Bolingbroke. What does Richard assume by that? Before Scroop completes it.
It went to his side.
They went over too. He goes, no. You don't understand me. 137. Uncurse their souls. That is, take it back. Their peace is made with heads and not with hands. Those whom you curse have felt the worst of death's destroying wound and lie full low, graved in the hollow ground. That is, they died for you. Martyrs to the cause. Okay? Almeril. Where's the Duke, my father? Duke of York. No matter where, of comfort no men speak. Let's talk of graves, of worms, and epitaphs. Make dust our paper, and with rainy eyes write sorrow on the bosom of the earth. I mean, even when he's at his worst, this guy's just a natural born poet. And it's kind of interesting, because probably, if you were to take a poll of English professors, in this play, who would be, which of the characters do you approve/like the most? Most of them would say, it's got to be Richard. Why? He speaks so well. He's just poetic. He's a thinker. He's a thoughtful person. Bolingbroke is rude and crude. Okay? I mean, the parallel used to be, back when I was a kid, back in the 70s, okay? All kinds of parallels were drawn between Nixon and McGovern. Guess which one of these characters was Nixon? It was Bolingbroke. Okay? Why? Quote unquote liberal professors hated Nixon. They liked McGovern. And because McGovern kind of used high, soaring rhetoric. Or maybe, go back even earlier, because it's better. Nixon and Kennedy. Richard's Kennedy. Of course, shouldn't go there, because what happens to, Kennedy is Richard. What happens to both of them, So, he goes on. Let's choose executors and talk of wills, and yet not so. For what can we bequeath save our deposed bodies to the ground? Our lands, our lives, and all our Bolingbrookes. Has he handed the crown over yet? No, he hasn't. Has he internally handed the crown over? Yes, he already has. In fact, he's going to say, top of the next page, bottom of line 155. For God's sake, let us sit upon the ground and tell sad stories of the death of kings. How some have been deposed. Have any been deposed prior to this point? No. No. In English history, none have said, king, you got to give up the crown. Doesn't happen. Some slain in war, yeah, that happened a lot. Some haunted by the ghosts they have deposed. Some poisoned by their wives, some sleeping killed, all murdered. For within the hollow crown that rounds the mortal temples of a king keeps death his court. And there the antic sits, scoffing his state and grinning at his pomp, allowing him a breath, a little scene. A little scene. Shakespeare analogizing the life of a king to what? A play. A little scene. What? To monarchize, be feared, and kill with looks. Infusing him with self and vain conceit. Infusing him, the king, with self, building up his self, his ego, and vain conceit, as if this flesh which walls about our life were brass impregnable. It's like he suddenly realizes, I can die. Somebody can kill me. And humored thus, fed up, built up thus, comes at the last and with a little pin, bores through his castle wall, and farewell, king. Why a little pin? What's the implication? What's this figment, this fiction the little king builds up for himself? It's like a little balloon, a little bubble. What's it take to pop a bubble? Just a little pin. He's saying it's not real. Cover your heads and mock not flesh and blood with solemn reverence. Throw away respect, tradition, form, and ceremonious duty. For you have but mistook me all this while. I live with bread like you, feel want, taste grief, need friends. Subjected thus, how can you say I'm a king? What is this really for Richard? This is his come to Jesus moment. What do I mean by that? Self-realization. Yes.
I feel like part of the time Richard is like this really pompous, like, king, but then at the same time he's that character and he's Creed in The Office, and he's like, what's my job? I know my job, but you tell me my job, because I don't actually know it. I feel like that's exactly what this is.
And what's happening right here? He's realizing, what a fool I've been. I've been an ass. Why? Because I believed all this stuff. You guys have all humored me. What does that mean? To humor somebody.
To laugh at a bad joke.
Okay, it could be that. What else could it be?
Play along.
Play along. Go along with them. Let them feel that way. My Lord, wise men ne'er sit and wail their woes, but presently prevent the ways to wail. What's Carlyle still doing? Come on, king, get up and fight them. You can do this. Okay? And then we find out when Richard Scroop comes in and says, your uncle York, he's joined with Bolingbroke. And all your northern castles yielded up, and all your southern gentlemen in arms upon his party. Okay, so if all your northern castles and all your southern gentlemen in arms, nobles, have joined up, you are screwed. You have nobody. Okay? So, Let's see here. Bolingbroke, 3-3, sends Northumberland as an embassy, okay, to the king. And he says, line 32, go to the rude ribs of that ancient castle through brazen trumpet and send the breath of parley into his ruined ears and thus deliver. Say this to the king. Henry Bolingbroke on both his knees doth kiss King Richard's hand, sends allegiance and true faith of heart to his most royal person, hither come even at his feet to lay my arms in power, provided that my banishment repealed and lands restored again be freely granted. Notice, he says, I come to do what? Bow down to you, lay down my arms and the arms of all those following me. That's it? No. What comes next? Provided, as long as, okay? In the real tradition, it should end. I come, bow down to you, surrender to you my arms and the arms of all those who follow me. Why? Because you are the king, period. But he's got conditions. So if he has conditions, what do those conditions mean? I don't mean, what are those conditions? I mean, what does the fact that he has conditions really imply?
He's the one with power here.
Bingo. He's the one with power. It's almost like saying, you want to have a talk with me? Okay, let's go to my office. Why? My setting. Home turf. Gives me the upper hand. Okay? Provided he restores my title and lands. If not, if he doesn't do that, I'll use the advantage of my power and lay the summer's dust with showers of blood rain from the wounds of slaughtered Englishmen. If he doesn't, I'll let loose the dogs of war, as Shakespeare says in another play. The which, how far off from the mind of Bolingbroke it is, such crimson tempest should be drenched the fresh green lap of fair King Richard's land. I don't want to do this. Don't make me. That is, if Englishmen die, Richard, it's because of you. Go, tell them all this. Okay? So, Richard comes forth. York, 68. Yet looks he like a king. What does he mean? What did Richard say earlier? When I come forth, it'll be like what? The sun rising in the east. Behold, his eye, as bright as is the eagle's, lightens forth controlling majesty. Alack, alack for woe that any harm should stain so fair a show. York's operating under the old mindset. The king is what? God's anointed. Richard comes in. We are amazed. We, still using the royal we. Why? Still king. And thus long have we stood to watch the fearful bending of thy knee, because we thought ourselves thy lawful king. And if we, that is, if we are the king, how dare thy joints forget to pay their awful duty to our presence? What has he just said that Northumberland has not done? Get on your damn knees. I'm the king. You got to understand how important this is. When Henry VIII was king, you can read accounts about this. And he would, early in his kingship, walk into people's presence. Later, when he was kingship, when he was so fat he couldn't walk, and carried into people's presence, they had to bow like head to the ground. And if you even did this, that was cause for death. If you even looked at him, that was cause to be killed. Okay? Why? Because Henry really wanted people to know, I'm so far above you. You can't even look at me. Okay? So, if we be not, if we're not the king anymore, show us the hand of God that hath dismissed us from our stewardship. For well we know no hand of blood and bone can grip the sacred handle of our scepter unless he do profane that is, make unsacred, steal, or usurp. So, show me God's hand that did this. And though you think that all, as you have done, have torn their souls by turning them from us, and we are barren and bereft of friends, yet no, my master, God omnipotent, is mustering in his clouds on our behalf armies of pest. And he just goes on like an Old Testament prophet, you know. God will rain down fire and brimstone, blah, blah, blah. Northumberland, King of heaven, forbid our Lord the King should so with civil and uncivil arms be rushed. We're not going to do that. His coming forth, that is Bolingbroke's, hath hither no further scope than for his lineal royalties, to beg enfranchisement immediate on his knees, which on the royal party granted once, his glittering arms he will commend to rust, his barbed steeds to stables, and his heart to faithful service of your majesty. This swears he, as he is a prince and just, and as I am a gentleman, I credit him. All Bolingbroke wants, lands, titles. Give him that. He'll fall down and swear allegiance to you. That's all he wants. Say thus the king returns. His noble cousin is right welcome hither, and all the number of his fair demands shall be accomplished without contradiction. Whatever he wants, as long as they are fair demands. With all the gracious utterance thou hast, speak to his gentle hearing, kind commends. Okay? Northumberland goes off, and notice. The king speaks to Emeril, York's son. We do abase ourselves, cousin, do we not? To look so poorly and to speak so fair. Shall we call back Northumberland and send defiance to the traitor and so die? So, when he just spoke to Northumberland, was he being honest? All right, I thought we'd finish today. We'll definitely finish on Tuesday because we're running out of time.